Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. I'm going to remind everyone before we get started that the calendar's been circled on November 11th. It's Veterans Day. That's a great thing, and that's most important, but circled for college football fans because Michigan goes to Happy Valley to take on Penn State. So there was a football game to be played on Saturday, and we believe Jim Harbaugh is going to be on the sideline for that game against Penn State, two of the top 10 teams in the nation, two college football playoff contenders. At least Penn State is for the next couple of days. Penn State needs to win this game, of course, having lost to Ohio State. For Michigan, they can lose to Penn State and still win the Big Ten, still beat Ohio State, of course, and finish in a college football playoff situation as a Big Ten champion. Do or die for Penn State. For Michigan, huge game. Certainly 6.5-point favorite on the road at Happy Valley. But this would normally be our focus of attention. But the ongoing NCAA investigation and the Big Ten's possible move against Michigan as well. Always seeking here at the Voice of College Football to get to the truth, to get to what matters, to get to the heart of it, because there is so much misinformation, so much lack of credibility out there amongst many, and some of them well known, that we would just like to get to the truth. I don't exactly know what that is. To a certain extent, I do, and we all do at this point. We know the foundation of the facts and the truth at the core. Now, we don't know. Again, the crux of this situation is going to come down to Jim Harbaugh's knowledge, or whether he initiated this circus, or whether he knew about it. That, to me, is the crux of this entire matter, and whether that can be proven. And then, in addition to that, once Michigan is dealt with, the whole Michigan end of this, how much of all the speculation, some of it has evidence, some of it does not. The speculation that's out there concerning Ohio State, concerning the 13 other Big Ten schools, and how much they're colluding against Michigan. How much of that is true? Is it true? Based on everything that I have looked at, all the sources that I've gone to, Jim Harbaugh is still in a position that has no connection to this. That's what is the latest report in regards to Jim Harbaugh. I don't personally know how a head coach of a football team can have this kind of information and not be aware of where it came from. That's me. But based on the investigation of where it stands, now where it currently stands versus what we know could be in two different places at this point. This investigation could go on for 2 years for the NCAA. So we've got two different issues going on in regards to the pursuit of truth and investigating Michigan. We've got the NCAA investigation, and we've got the Big Ten, which, as my understanding, as it stands right this second, the Big Ten has yet to launch an investigation. The Big Ten is working on just the information that the NCAA has provided. And of course, we've got 13 schools, some, of course, more than others, that have a motivation to push the Big Ten, have already pushed the Big Ten and Commissioner Tony Petitti to take action against Jim Harbaugh and against Michigan. Now we know that the Big Ten, having contacted Michigan to say, we are looking into this and expect or know that there is possible penalties and discipline coming before the NCAA completes its investigation, and then Michigan shooting a 10-page notification back to the Big Ten to say, we've got state legislatures on our side, 11 particular members. We will fight this. The quote that has been sourced by ESPN and others is that Michigan has is not going to show up at a gunfight with a knife. And we know that with all of its prowess as a university, as one of the elite universities, public universities in this country, that Michigan has hired a law firm out of Washington, D.C., and is fully prepared to take the Big Ten to court if the Big Ten acts against Michigan unilaterally by itself as a lone entity before the NCAA investigation is over. Wow. Okay, this could be messy. It has the potential to be messy. And I really understand the Big Ten's. I understand the Big Ten's attempt to come to some conclusion prior to the NCAA investigation. They don't want one of its prime brands and members to be under investigation and this to be looming for this entire time, and for its championship to possibly be tainted, and its college football playoff participant to be possibly tainted. The Big Ten doesn't want that. They want to clarify things as soon as possible, even if it hurts, even if it looks bad, to get this out of the way and not go into a playoff with a team that may later be ruled ineligible and have those wins vacated. So I understand where the Big Ten, plus the Big Ten, more so than all of that, is considering placating to the pressure of the 13 other schools. So that's where the Big Ten is, between a rock and a hard place, as they say, going up against one of its prime brands and knowing that there's evidence there, and that evidence has been substantiated. So let's start with this. We're not going to go through all the details that everyone at this point is probably updated on over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks. Michigan cheated. So let's get that straight. Many Michigan fans don't want to hear that, but at some level, regardless of how severe you believe that is or how insignificant you believe it is, regardless of what you believe about anyone else having knowledge of it within the coaching staff and Jim Harbaugh and the administration and the AD, we know that they cheated. Okay. And me making that statement isn't saying like this is out of control and this is horrible and Harbaugh knew it and it needs to be punished severely. No, I'm just saying we know that a guy, Connor Stalions, exists, and we know that he was on staff at Michigan, and we know that he went against NCAA rules and broke rules and obtained signs. We know that for sure. What was done with that information exactly, we don't know. There was confiscation of laptops to see whether that information was contained there and sent to other members of the Michigan staff, and Harbaugh in particular. That's one thing. And then all this evidence with Stalions on the sideline at Central Michigan, scouting Michigan State and stealing their signs, all of the evidence, video and picture evidence of Stalions on the sideline during Michigan games, standing next to coordinators, feeding them signals. And I know it's more specific than that. That to this point is what you call evidence. It's evidence. It's not locked in, guaranteed evidence that is damning in and of itself. It just is evidence that can be added to other evidence. So we know Michigan cheated, but we don't know who acted and who orchestrated all this. We know that Connor Stalions did, of course, but we don't know if he was directed to. We don't know if he was funded, all of those things. That's going to be at the crux of all this. And that's what the NCAA is working on. And we can say that the NCAA works at a snail's pace. That's probably true. But we're also dealing with a lot of complicated matters here. And then once it's all collected, then determining punishment and then also determining legalities that the NCAA wants to protect itself, make sure that it's been protected in all of this. So there's a few things I'd like to get to before we take any calls on this. Maybe I'll take Ben's call, and then there's a number of things I'd like to get to concerning all of this, because I did reach out on X, and I also reached out on our YouTube community page to say, what Michigan, let me back up, what college football reporters / insiders do you trust to deliver the facts, the truth, to be unbiased as much as possible, and who is on top of this story? Who is the best out there that's on top of this story? Or what collection of people? It can't just be one. Could be a number of people that are competent, capable, doing the right things and doing a good job. And they're not necessarily always the most famous people. They're sometimes not the most famous people, and sometimes the most famous are not getting it straight. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying that this is a story that you need to understand, because every so often somebody will comment to me about me getting ahead of a story, me going to my sources, me trying to crack the case on something. That is not my role. That would, number one, be futile for me to attempt to do. I don't have enough sources connected to any one program. First of all, we are a national channel. We cover all of college football. So this is not a Michigan channel. It's not an Ohio State channel. It's not a Texas channel. It's not a USC channel. We have those channels connected, but we cover all of college football. And we cover the sport. We cover football. Now we've got to deal with these type of issues connected to the game on the field. But it would be a complete waste of my time to use the connections that I have, because they're nowhere close to the connections that those insiders have. Now, overall, throughout the entire country and all of college football, I think we've got a pretty good network of connections of people that that I know because they're on here, but also people that I know across the country and are connected with college football, connected with television and related industries that you don't know about, that I talk to, that I'm in connection with, but not for any one particular team that comes anywhere close to the people that are connected, that are reporters and insiders for those particular teams. Now, overall, again, I think we've got a pretty good connection of a network of people and sources here at the Voice of College Football about all of college football, but not for any one particular team that can come anywhere close to the connections that others have out there. And I'm not running an insiders type platform. So I will always attribute the sources and the information that we receive from the same places that you do, and you see it. And then at times from some people that I solely have a connection to and heard it, and it was given to me directly. That happens. But usually I'm out there combing the internet just like you are, and will attribute those facts, those information, or what is supposed information and facts to those reporters and insiders. All right. So before I get to all of this other business, we do have Ben waiting. So we'll take the call from Ben right here at the Voice of College Football. Ben, how you doing?
Hey, Mark. Sorry, I'm on my laptop, so I don't know if my audio is quite as good as it has been.
From my memory of your other calls, your audio is probably better.
Okay, then I'll take it. So I have before I was wondering if you had read that 10-page letter that they had sent to that Michigan athletic department sent to the commissioner.
No.
You should give it if it's an interesting
Okay.
read. You should give it. I've read it probably twice.
You've read it twice. You've got much more investment in it than I do, but I should read it.
I mean, you cover it enough. You should read it. It would help you. I think it would. I mean, if it tells you anything, it at least tells you what information has been presented to Michigan, because it explains it in that letter. What evidence is against them, what they have. So it does explain that in the letter. So between the rumors and that it talks about. But so this is what I want to ask you, Mark. When you say you say Michigan has cheated, that's your so. And what rule are you particularly talking about? Are you talking about in-person scouting?
Yes.
11.6.1?
Yes.
Okay. Or and then not necessarily the on-field recording. Are you going to include that?
Well, we know that so we've got the Central Michigan incident, correct?
Well, the Central Michigan incident, I mean, I don't know. I mean, has that been proven to be him? I mean, if it is, then that's in-person scouting. And I'm not going to argue that. I just didn't know that was proven to be him.
I thought it was proven to be him by the various passes and pass lists and all of that.
By the lists? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
By the pass that was given to him and the lists that are kept by the university of who received those. I thought
I was not aware of that.
I wasn't going by pictures and video and all that business and disguises and all that business.
So the last thing that I heard is that they didn't have any. The last thing I heard about their visitor passes, his name wasn't on any of them.
Oh, okay. I heard.
And when I read, and it definitely doesn't mention that in the letter that I read.
Hello? You with us, Ben? Hello?
As evidence against Michigan. I'm sorry, did you lose me?
Yes, we
Hello?
did.
Mark? Sorry. Yeah, and if that's the case, I mean, that breaks the rule. I mean,
okay, we lost you again. So you're saying, if you can hear me, Ben, you're saying that the other evidence of the other folks that were given tickets to go to those games in those locations, that was not cheating.
Sure.
All right, we lost Ben.
Other than I'm not.
All right, we'll have to let Ben go because we're losing him for like 20, 30 seconds at a time. Got our next caller, a very distinguished one, John D'Adamo, Michigan.
Hey, Mark.
Host. How are you?
I'm good. I saw you were doing a show on the whole situation. Had to come by and talk it through a little bit more, the latest.
Yeah, I don't pretend to have any information that other people don't have. So it's not about that necessarily. It's about establishing what do we have for sure.
Yeah.
What is out there that, and not just on the Michigan side of their possible transgressions, but on the other side of this that is being rumored and talked about and reported by other Big Ten schools. And then, yeah, that's pretty much what needs to be determined.
Yeah. So essentially, we had Ben mentioned it. So the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, basically served Michigan with a notice of potential punishment. They didn't say what the punishment was going to be. They just said we're looking at potential punishment. Michigan had 48 hours to respond. They did. We got the full 10 pages of the response. The too long didn't read version of that is pretty much the same as what Santa Ono said. We need due process, right? Like, let the NCAA investigation play out. But then it also goes into, okay, here's what the Big Ten said was the evidence was mostly the tickets that were purchased by Connor Stallions. Some of the other ones I'm not even going to mention because it's like, that's the main one that, he kind of was a little bit like, let's just say overzealous and, didn't really do a good job of cleaning up his tracks there. And so, that's the summary of the 10 pages basically is wait for due process. And now it's up to Tony Petitti who was going to give him, from what I saw, somewhere between 2 games to an indefinite. He's really only allowed to give 2 games and 10K according to the sportsmanship bylaws, unless he gets approval from executives. But that's a whole nother layer that he has to do.
Yep.
Now I'm seeing that it's possible that there's just a fine, because now you've got the 10-pager from Michigan that you've also recently gotten. Jim Harbaugh's lawyer also sent something. 13 lawmakers in the state of Michigan sent something. This is no longer just Ward Manuel and Santa Ono and Jim Harbaugh. This is now a state of Michigan thing where basically everybody's saying, let the investigation play out, and then we'll take whatever punishment is deemed fit based on the evidence, based on Michigan having the ability to defend itself, and also looking at what people did in terms of sign stealing in other schools. At the end of the day, I think Michigan was probably the most extensive in terms of the operation of it, but from what we're starting to see things trickle out that potentially, and Ohio State denies it, and Rutgers, Schiano was kind of like, I don't want to talk about this right now. Ryan Day denied it, and Purdue, I don't know if they've said anything yet, but that they were talking to each other, and there was a literal spreadsheet, and we've seen it, of all of the signs and signals of Michigan. And so the extent of that, was it just the 2022 Big Ten championship game, or were there other games that these signs and signals were used for? And does that also break the sportsmanship bylaws? Because I think if Connor Stallions broke the sportsmanship bylaws, then so did probably these other things in terms of colluding against one school. So I think with all that said, the most likely scenario here, if I were betting on it, would be that he's probably going to levy a fine and say, let the investigation play out, like he probably should have in the beginning. If that's normally what happens. See, the College Football Playoff Committee said the same thing, right? We're going to let the investigation play out. We're going to let things play out on the field, and then wins can be vacated later if it is deemed that this was serious enough of a breach. Wins can be vacated, suspensions can happen, postseason bans can happen. I don't think that will happen, but yeah, I just think that there's a bit of a rush to judgment when we just don't have the conclusion of the investigation yet.
I think we have a new commissioner who was pressured by 13 schools, or some of those 13 schools.
Of them, yeah.
And then he hits Michigan with that, and may not have expected Michigan to come with as much clout as it did, and backlash, which he should have expected that. There has to be an understanding that there's still an NCAA investigation, of course, as we all know from the other situation, and Michigan self-imposed something there. So there was an admittance before an investigation was complete by Michigan to say, so this is not unprecedented.
True.
And this has been done by other schools where they have self-imposed before the final conclusion to show a good faith measure of, okay, we understand there's something here that needs to be addressed, and so we will take the initiative to do so.
Yeah, and Michigan fans are going to hate me for bringing this up, but like the Juwan Howard incident, Michigan did not challenge that when the Big Ten levied a punishment. Why? Because it was on video. There is video evidence of the physical altercation, right? So Michigan did not challenge that. Michigan is challenging this because, as with the main concrete evidence being these ticket sales, and we haven't really seen what else is there. Then let's see all the evidence, and then let's see how much of a competitive advantage it gave Michigan versus other schools. But from what I understand, sign stealing in general, It happens, not to what Michigan did, but it happens. I am not convinced that Connor Stalions broke the bylaws. And the reason I'm saying that, unless it's proven, which it hasn't been yet, CMU has not come out and said that was Connor Stalions on the sideline. But if it's proven that that's him and he was recording with a little blue light, that's breaking the bylaws. But what we know right now, if everybody who went to these games was not staff, then my reading of 11, the beginning of 11 in the bylaws, it seems pretty clear that it's staff, that it's full-time staff scouting in person to these games. That's what isn't allowed. There was an amendment, and there was an acknowledgement in that amendment that I believe it was a couple of years ago that that you could, an acknowledgement that you can get third-party film, that you can find stuff on YouTube and all 22, that you can hire a service basically. So if you look deep enough in, I think that there's a case to be made that there may not be a lot there, unless it is proven that Stalions was at CMU. Then there should be punishment, and Harbaugh is going to be held accountable, because now there's no more he didn't know, because they put that whole clause in that it's lack of institutional control, and Harbaugh needs to be accountable to the whole program.
Well, to me, I would find it foolish for the NCAA to pursue this investigation, knowing their own bylaws and then knowing what evidence came to them, if they didn't make a determination that this would be deemed as violating the bylaws. Connor Stalions purchasing the tickets and having third parties per se out there recording. I think that's an extension of the staff. The staff is still receiving information digitally and otherwise from other people to then use. So maybe not by the letter of the law, but I think it's very much within the bylaws, based on how I read them, that to me is a violation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're extending it to mean, okay, staff received this information, or at least Stalions did, laminated it up or whatever, however he relayed it. From everything we've seen, Harbaugh didn't know, which doesn't matter for the NCAA at all. That investigation doesn't.
I think it matters immensely.
Well, for that, I'm talking about, because there's that piece in the bylaws. Basically, Harbaugh's responsible no matter what. But the Big Ten piece, I do think it's relevant for what the Big Ten is looking at doing, because there is no clause about that, and so I think that's the separation. I mean, it does matter, but yeah, I'm just saying, like, Harbaugh's going to get dinged by the NCAA if this is found to be happening.
Yeah, and I still believe it matters to the NCAA. It matters in that, are they still going to take action, and does it still violate even if he's completely clueless as to what was going on? Yes, but those violations and the harshness of the penalty, in my estimation, based on what we've seen throughout history in the NCAA, is going to pale in comparison to if it is either known by Harbaugh or initiated by Harbaugh. That level of punishment is going to be far greater.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to come anywhere close to the realm of vacating wins, postseason ban, anything like that.
I don't think so
Harbaugh's
either.
not connected. If it's lack of institutional control, then it's going to be it's going to be financial. It's going to be, I don't even know if it'll be scholarships. I think it's going to be financial, and maybe a suspension of some sort, like what we saw earlier this season, although that was self-imposed.
And they'll probably take that 3 games, by the way, they're looking at it as a holistic. So they're going to probably impose punishment for both at the same time and like lump them together. So they're going to factor in those 3 games for Harbaugh and that 1 game for Sharon Moore that Michigan self-imposed in whatever the final punishment is.
They're putting these two cases together. I didn't hear
That's
that.
that's what I saw, is that the final punishment is going to be lumped together. They're like, obviously they're digging into Burgergate and digging into Signgate separately, but the punishment will be unified.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have one more question, and then you have a couple more callers here, but did you hear that the other than the playoff, the bowl games, they're actually going to experiment with helmet communications in the headsets?
Yes.
So I think based on that, if that goes well, hopefully that could get instituted across the board in 2024. And then this whole thing, no matter who signs stole and no matter who, signals, whatever, like, that's what Matt Rule said. Let's get it like the NFL, which he was just coaching in, where you have helmet communications, one player on the offense, one player on the defense at least. And so I'm very curious to see how those bowl games go, and if that will then lead to instituting across the board.
Yeah, I would like to eliminate as many possibilities for anyone to cheat, because we can't trust people, basically, is what it comes down to. We can't trust people, and then we create a culture of distrust. And so then people that we think otherwise wouldn't cheat get caught up in the cheating as well, because they're trying to keep up with whomever else. And I'm not pointing at Michigan as being the initiator of cheating. This has been going on in various forms for decades. So
sure. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, the sign stealing, I don't know how many comments come in to our various channels about sign stealing's not cheating. That's not the issue. It's not the sign stealing. It's the off-campus advanced scouting portion of it.
The extent of it, and whether that violates 1161. That's what they're looking at, and how much, to what extent. But so yeah, Michigan. If you guys missed Michigan Wolverines live, you should definitely check it out, because we had Tim Aiden from Black Shoe Diaries, and we had Tanner Wooten from Blue by 90 stopping by at various points. Really, really good content. We do it every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So check it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John, appreciate you being here. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Mark, as always. Back to work for me. All right. Bye.
So we keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I did want to touch on a few things there. I was just curious to get everyone's take on this, because I know many of you are highly invested in this. Of course, you're watching right now, so you're highly invested in this, and most of you are extremely biased. And I don't say that as a criticism. I say that as you're a fan, so you're highly biased. Is there any mystery to going on Michigan message boards and seeing 99.9% of the responses being defending Michigan and saying this is not a big deal and everybody else is cheating and all that business, and then going to a rival site message board, which I'm not a message board guy, so I guess I shouldn't say this for sure, but they're the same. They're just a repeat of what we see here on my comment section and in the chat. And it's just, it's the most obvious thing in the world. And my latest example of this that I've found so amusing is when we did our off-season look at Michigan 1997 versus Nebraska 1997. Of course, they shared a national championship, to ask people who would have won a game or who rightfully deserved or earned the national championship over the other. And I was begging, pleading for someone who is a Nebraska fan to say that Michigan actually was a better team, or they earned it, or they played a better schedule, or had anything favorable to say about Michigan, or vice versa, to have any. So that is the clear delineation that almost everyone is so incredibly biased. So then this ramps up a million times for a situation like this, because it's in the here and now. And here we go. Mike, a message board is basically what you're on right now. and what's kind of interesting is that earlier today I had somebody text me to let me know that I was on the Bucknuts 247 message board. This was kind of funny. So somebody started a conversation that at the top said Mark Rogers. And this is on, again, Bucknuts 247 Sports. And someone, I guess, who subscribers to Bucknuts, I guess, can start their own discussion and can start their own, their own message board discussion chain. And so Buck there, I think that's, anyway, I'm not going to go through it. Buck stated, what was that, yesterday? I noticed. So he must have titled it, or somebody titled this, that's received 3,900 comments. Good Lord. I just noticed that. So again, this was sent to me by a friend in the business and said, look at this message board. So you got Buck who says, I noticed he, meaning me, Mark Rogers, was not on Steve Deace's show yesterday. Anyone care to comment? Well, 3,900 people commented, or maybe he's got 3,900 comments. I think that's it. I think we got 30 comments down here. Interesting. Then we've got Flip Flop 1966 said Rogers ripped scum pretty bad on one of his podcasts. I'm sure that is what happened. I tried to find it, but there are so many Rogers podcasts on YouTube, it's impossible. That is true. We've got so many videos that nobody can find what we're doing here. Then we got Buckeye Warrior, who's commented 65,000 times. Apparently, if I'm getting that correctly, that's crazy. Steve doesn't want anyone on that disagrees over this scandal. He wants someone to say everyone does it. Michigan got no advantage. Stallions was a lone wolf, etc. Rogers has stopped saying that stuff. Well, I never did say that stuff. I just said that could be a possibility and still could be a possibility. So I haven't stopped saying that as a possibility. And on and on and on. It's a bit amusing. It was mentioned a number of other times. So that was brought to my attention, which was rather funny. Okay. We won't go into that any deeper. We'll take our next call here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Michael Hogue on the line. Michael, how you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. Kind of an after-school special today, I see.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Not bad. Hey, got a quick question for you. You've been credentialed and stuff like that before. I've been credentialed to do stuff with ESPN and other networks and stuff like that. The thing I'm trying to figure out is, and you got friends who's on coaching staff, and same here.
Yep.
One actually wonders how he got in touch with them, with knowing it was Central Michigan, knowing maybe what's going on and stuff like that. They said, okay, here's your sideline pass. Those are considered like golden. Very few are given out. I mean, you got to be like what, a recruit. You got to be like a alumni, or you got to be some kind of big donor to get those, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's only about, I forget what the number was, 30, 40 of those given out. Yeah, which are separate from the media credentials, as I understand it. Like being in the media, when I would go to college football games and stand on the sideline, there's an area where the team is. Now, media's not allowed to cross onto that tarp, and you can't just go stand next to the head coach. You are restricted to the rest of the sideline if you're in media. Now, his credential allowed him to any access along the sideline with the team. Exactly.
Yeah, because the only thing is, like I said, I got friends who work and stuff like that. Aren't those usually only good during the pregame and stuff like that? And if you do got lucky to have one for the whole game where you can stay in the sideline, you got to be like away from the team.
Well, it would be my guess that number one, that there is some kind of conference stipulation, meaning that meaning that
I'm here. I
need
was
to
just getting
take
the
that call,
football.
Michael? All
No,
right.
no, you're good.
Okay. So that the conference has guidelines and regulations concerning the sideline and who can approach the sideline and all of that. And then I would think each school, I know that exists, and then each school probably tweaks it to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not an expert on sideline passes and who receives them and who doesn't. I just know that for 7 years, I got my sideline passes from Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss, and I could go stand on the sideline or run up to the press box, and I had my choice of either one. I had my seat in the press box, and I had my position on the sideline, and I had my credential. And
now, when you was doing that, was you actually shooting the game? Sometimes,
if I didn't have a if I didn't have a photographer with me, or I didn't trust them, sometimes it was a little bit of both.
Oh, there's rogue photographers in media. Wow,
No, I
didn't
mean
know
I
that.
didn't. Not. I'm not saying I didn't trust them from an ethical standpoint. I didn't trust how good they were. Sometimes I
That's
just take the
I know. I
camera
just
right out of their hands and do it myself.
because I thought media members they usually wasn't able to come down. Well, unless you was shooting the game and stuff like that. Because generally, I thought you couldn't come down to the last 5 minutes of the game and stuff like that.
Nope. I would stand on the sideline the whole time.
Not bad. No,
Stand
I
right
was
next to my
wondering something.
cameraman.
Yep. And one thing, because me and Ben's chatting and stuff like that, if I'm not mistaken, in Ohio State like a trimester school, because he was asking about Urban Meyer, how he was able to do stuff with Fox during this before the school year and stuff like that. And did Urban Meyer actually teach at Ohio State too while he's coaching?
Every coach at Ohio State has a class that they
Oh, did they?
teach. Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but it has something to do with leadership and so forth. But that's given to every Ohio State head football coach.
Okay, no, I was just wondering stuff like that. All right, I'm just waking up, so I'm kind of my stomach's rumbling. I'm gonna grab some food, Mark. But thanks for the time, man. Oh,
Okay,
you do
Michael.
anything tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night. Yeah, I believe so. We should be
just
here.
wondering because I know you didn't last week, but you had other stuff like that. Then I was just wondering. So you will be going over the games for this weekend tomorrow, then?
Oh, we've got to go over the games. We got to put this nonsense to rest at some point. I am reluctantly doing this, but I knew that there would be a market for it, and people are interested in this Michigan fiasco. So,
yeah, my thing is nothing's going to happen until after the first of the year.
yeah, nothing is going to happen.
And
I think it's pretty obvious to see that Tony Petitti acted a bit out of line. That's not something I would have done in regards to contacting a school to say, be expecting punishment. This is not your punishment, but be expecting it. I think that was a misstep on his part. And now Michigan has come back with a full throttle.
Just bring it. We're going to find it.
Yes. And so I do not expect anything else to happen regarding Michigan in the Big Ten. I think this is going to solely go back to an NCAA investigation.
Oh,
that's my thought.
How funny would I just remember? How funny would this be if this investigation lasted? And then it was kind of like the Miami investigation a few years ago, where it blew up in the NCAA's face. Can you imagine the reaction from Ohio State fans?
Oh, you're talking about the investigation into NIL at Miami?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's two
nothing
different
came
things.
of it.
But I know it's two different things. But could you imagine the reaction of Ohio State fans if this blew up in the NCAA's face? Though.
Yeah, they wouldn't be too happy, that's for sure. And Michigan fans would be pounding their chest and beating their chest, and we'd have a flip-flop of laughing and all of that. Now, for me personally, I've said since day one, I just want the truth to be discovered and the proper penalties to be handed out, whatever those are.
Yep, that's true. All right, sir, I've taken too much. I think I've went 3 times over the 3-minute limit. Thanks, man.
You're good. Thank you, Michael. Have a good one. All right. We've not instituted the 3-minute limit today. And even when we did, we didn't adhere to it. So we will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Connor himself on the line.
Hey, what's up, man? Couple things, man. I thought Tom Mars had a great argument. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. You're a little low,
had a,
but
had
we
a
got you.
great argument for the Harbaugh should have known, and it was basically if coaches and other teams are able to get Michigan signs down to a T, the legal way, down to a T. Why would Harbaugh not think Connor Stallings could do the same? It's a great argument, in my opinion. If coaches and other teams were able to put on a spreadsheet, match the plays, match the signals to a T, and Connor Stallings had something similar to that in his possession, why should he be expected to think that it was done any other way when clearly other coaches are able to do it?
Yeah. I don't have
I
a
think that's a great
backlash for
argument.
that right this second. We've got a horrible reverb here.
From me?
Yeah, we're hearing my audio over your feed.
Hold on, let me. Is it better?
I don't know until I talk. No, it's still there. No, I would like to be able to have some type of comeback for that, but I can't say that I do off the top of my head. I would think somebody else would have come back with something.
Okay, what about now?
I don't know until I talk. No, there's still reverb.
Man, what is that? Hold on, actually, you know what? I think I might know what it is. Can you talk again?
Hello, hello. Yeah, there's still reverb.
Dang. I don't know what that is. I'm using what I always use. This is weird. Hold on, let me try.
All right. Well, click out and give it another shot.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Let's catch up with these super chats. We appreciate those, of course. All right, we've got Erica. And you know what I find rather interesting, if it holds up, and also rather respectable, is that in all of this, Kirk Ferentz has basically said, or no, he has not said anything. I know in the initial release of what Big Ten coaches could also be involved in the backlash against Michigan, I know that Nebraska, Iowa, and I believe it was surprisingly Michigan State. I believe it was those three schools that there was no connection to. If any school, for as much criticism I have of the way Kirk Ferentz has run this program in one particular way, I would say that if there's one school in the Big Ten that was found to have no involvement in any of this whatsoever, then it would be Iowa. That would be my guess. And I would have even more respect for Kirk Ferentz. And maybe that would give us some indication and some evidence as to why Iowa can't produce a first down. Maybe they're not stealing signs like everybody else is. Okay, Erica says, are any of the other schools accused of sign stealing being investigated? Well, nobody is being investigated as of right now based on everything I know. And also, I think it's been pretty well substantiated by major services that Ryan Day has not been connected to anything that he was being accused of by certain outlets. But certainly, if there's anyone in the chat that has heard, I'm sure, I am positive that we would know of other schools and an official investigation. Now, in connection with this investigation, certainly Michigan is giving information and others are coming out that's coming into this under the guise of this investigation, because we've seen all of the backlash of what the other schools are being accused of. Now, whether that's illegal, let's take this spreadsheet deal between there's a few different versions, but the spreadsheet and the most details we got was concerning Rutgers and Ohio State giving signs to Purdue before the Big Ten championship game last season. Okay. Now, to me, that's unethical. But I don't know if it's a rule. I don't know if it's breaking rules. All right. We also have David here. Mark, are you and Dace breaking up? No. Not at all. Steve produced the show. He's got, with all this silly sign stealing and cheating in college football, let's understand that there are people doing much more important work than that. And he's one of them. Much more important work, dealing with much more important activities and situations than this. So, we're just playing games here. None of this really matters. It would just be nice if people could actually, if we really boil this down to what it is, we've got a piece of leather, cowhide, that we blow up to an oblong shape, and we kick it and we throw it around a field, and guys hit and run into each other. And we actually have morons who are wanting to cheat at that. That's what it comes down to. That's what it really comes down to. And then if we didn't all love to watch this, these guys run around on a grass field and run into each other, they would be having to pump gas or shine shoes or sell insurance or whatever. All right. So just a little perspective at times is good. A little perspective on all of this. These individuals, at least on the football field, I know that some of them are great musicians. They're great, have great financial minds. Their dad taught them how to, fix plumbing. They can do other things, but for a large portion of them, or some portion of them, they have no usable skill set. So let's understand that as well. All right, let's go to Sean here at the Voice of College Football. Sean, how you doing?
Good. Been really busy all day. By the way, I'm looking for a new vacuum cleaner. Do you know where I can get a new refurbished reseller of any vacuums?
I'm trying to figure out where the joke is.
You didn't catch that story yesterday about Stallions and Blake
No,
Corum?
I'm staying as far. Oh, he's selling. Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah.
Vacuum salesman.
Yeah.
Sports.
That is a wild twist in this story. This is
that he's a vacuum salesman.
That Corum and Stallions were both listed.
Oh, that they started this business together.
Yeah,
Well,
Corum's completely denying that he had any involvement in it. So, I don't know. Maybe the Stallions put Corum's name, listed Corum somehow got Corum legally listed as a proprietor without Corum's knowledge. Which that sounds like maybe. The sign stealing thing might not be the biggest concern for Connor.
Well, that sounds like either Blake Corum is lying, which I'm not accusing him of it, or yes, that this guy is notorious, just a scoundrel in a lot of different ways. This goes to show you that in and of itself, how little interest I really have in this is that I came across that information, and it seems like it was a month ago. It was just yesterday, I think, all that came out, maybe the day before. That's completely left my brain until you brought that up. Yeah.
It probably won't have much relevance in the sign stealing.
No, but it is funny. It is interesting. That's even a bad word. I try to avoid that word as much as possible.
Bizarre.
Spewing that out constantly. This is interesting, and that's interesting. All right, Sean.
Okay.
Where are we with this?
All right. Right now, I mean, the Big Ten, I don't feel like they can act unless they want to open themselves to just massive legal jeopardy.
Well, yeah.
It's just, I mean, there's even if they have a strong case right now, there's a chance that they could lose something in court and be on the hook. I was saying this: if they suspend Harbaugh and Michigan doesn't win the East, doesn't go to the Big Ten championship game, there's might be a rightful claim to damages lost by the university in excess of tens of millions of dollars. that they could make. So,
if they would suspend him, it's proven that they didn't cheat, or it's determined,
or it's determined that the punishment was improper.
And then and then it can be connected that we didn't have our head coach for the most crucial games of the season. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but the only justification, and I made this statement, so I don't mind retracting my thoughts in a certain sense. I reserve the right to change my mind to a certain extent. I did say when I heard that about Tony Petitti possibly suspending Harbaugh for a couple games, I thought, well, if all we have right now is what everybody knows about what Stallions did, and we have yet to make the connection to Harbaugh or any of that, just what he did, if we're considering that that's known, that is a known fact and violation, that he would be well within his grounds to say lack of institutional control, whatever that conduct policy clause is, and we're going to suspend Harbaugh for 2 games just based on what's known right now, and that was fully reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, that's
how I saw it at the time.
But I mean, like in most circumstances, most leagues, you see this in the NFL, you see this, almost any organization. If there's a suspension levied in the middle of the season, usually that suspension is suspended. It's on hold pending appeals processes. And I don't know if there's any sort of mechanism in place like that for the Big Ten, the NCAA. Like, can they levy a unilateral, instantly enforceable punishment today?
Well, see, what I'm saying is that even though the investigation is yet to be completed, they have information from the NCAA that has been confirmed, and it's the information and maybe more, but it's at least the information that we know about what Stallions did. And so if the Big Ten is evaluating, okay, lack of institutional control, we're going to levy a 2-game suspension, and we deem that as fair, and we already have that information, even though the investigation is still ongoing, then we're going to go ahead and do that to at least make part of this judgment and penalty in the moment, and not 2 years from now, all of that.
Oh, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I mean, if you give, I mean, in most circumstances, you can't just sort of institutionally. I mean, I think this is actually part of labor law, is if you don't give the accused party a chance to appeal and rebut, then the suspension should not be enforced immediately. And I mean, like, I don't think they will. I think they're just exposed to too much legal issues to enforce anything against him right now.
I would like to know how much input Tony Petitti got from anyone at the Big Ten office or otherwise, from schools or anyone, before he sent this to Michigan, this warning of sorts.
Yeah. Well, he's in a really difficult situation, because if he doesn't act, he's viewed as weak. Yeah. And if he does, he's viewed as tyrannical, as hasty, as
it's not an easy job being a sports commissioner.
Yeah, it's absolutely not. And I want to point out, like, as far as like the edge gained argument from this goes, I don't even think it'd be like that hard to determine, like, if Michigan got like a real edge from this, that was palpable. I mean, you can observe gameplay. Yeah. Okay. Are you listening? Okay. Got it. You can observe. What'd you say?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, you can, like, if you look at the film here and see if they're just in the right calls way more often than they should be, than they statistically can be. You can, I mean, like, so I said this, there have been massive cheating scandals broken in online chess and poker the last few years. And the way they've been caught are by detecting abnormal patterns, statistically impossible decision making on the part of the opponents. So people were using like real time solver assisted computer assisted programming and making way better plays, playing at a much higher level than they were really capable of.
Sure. Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think that should be used, and I think that would be valid in using as evidence, but I don't think that that's the end all be all. I think the sample size is much smaller.
The sample size is much smaller.
And it's less precise determining if a coordinator is making a right. What is a right play call?
Oh, okay. So like a right play call is if you say you're watching Ohio State, and if they have a bunch of man beaters and you are like always in zone every single time they run double crossing routes, you're in a cover 2 look, which those calls don't work against. Or every time, or the one play that was kind of used as evidence, and this is just one play. So I don't know how much this means, but you saw that. Have you seen like the video where Stallions is allegedly mouthing run right to Minter, and then Minter makes the play call right after that.
Yeah.
And they start out in that cover 2 look, and immediately on the ball snap, both the safeties kind of crash right to the hole, like right to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you're seeing that over and over, like that's kind of an irrational defense. They're leaving themselves very exposed.
Sure.
On the edges.
No, it's a great point.
If they're taking massive gambles and are right just like an insane amount of time, like at just a high percentage, all their high volatility plays are just working. They're just right. Like that's suspicious.
So what has to be determined then is what football minds do you get involved to evaluate all those situations that are unbiased and have nothing to do with this, and where do you bring them in from?
Yeah, and you can have them. I mean, you should have a team of football people working with a team of analytics and data people. And I think you could actually see the case about whether or not Michigan was really performing at an advantage level with this. And I mean, like, I haven't heard all the talk about what advantage they've had so far has been completely hypothetical. It's been just loud mouths, people running their mouths. But I mean,
qualified people or unqualified people? You talking about like just media people or guys like Lane Kiffin?
All of them, all people that are, and like even the qualified people who, I mean, even though the qualified people aren't, I mean, their individual opinion isn't actually worth like that much. Here, and like I'm saying, it's just a lot of people are saying, oh, they would be 5-7 without this, or it gives them no advantage whatsoever.
Sure. No,
and
I don't think
certainly on the middle.
I don't think Michigan should be nailed to the wall because 1 or 2 or 50 football coaches said that it's significant. But I do think that somebody like Lane Kiffin is an authority on whether knowing another team's signs is significant. Why would he not have?
I haven't heard what Lane Kiffin said.
He said it's significant.
He said it is significant?
It is significant. He said it, and according to an article in The Athletic with like 50 coaches, the majority of them said it was significant.
I would imagine. I mean, like intuitively, it's fairly obviously significant. If you can have just much better information on the signs. And I think equating a few coaches sharing notes on signs to having videotaped sideline footage that you can go back and you can run tests, run hypotheses. You can get much more precise with and confident in your signs, in your ability to read their signs if you have that kind of information, if you have that kind of data. than just like, oh, the coaches, we saw this pattern during the game. You know, when they do this little whirly bird, we think they're going to be in cover one and they're going to blitz. Okay, but if you have the video evidence of that, you can actually like test that observation, and you have like hours and hours to review it. I think that's way more valuable than a few coaches, you know, sharing what they gained in real time during a game.
No, I totally get your point, and it makes absolute sense. I'm just saying that I'm going to trust coaches saying whether it's significant or not significant.
It's fairly intuitive, though, right? I mean,
I think there's a fundamental argument between people that think that we need to go to great extremes to determine how significant or how much of an advantage is gained versus other people like myself that I look at this more holistically as I don't care. I don't care how much advantage was gained. You made a decision to cheat, and therefore you did it with the understanding that this is against the rules, and who knows what the punishment could be if you break the rules, and also that there is only one reason that anybody cheats. There's this, you can't get around this. You don't cheat if you believe you don't need to cheat.
Yeah.
And if they need to penalize everybody in the Big Ten, like if they find out and they keep unraveling this and it was done by everyone, well, then you either just say, well, you throw up your hands if you're in that situation and say, well, everybody cheated, we're changing the rules, and you're not going to fine everyone because, well, the NCAA could, but the Big Ten obviously doesn't want to penalize its own schools unilaterally across the board because that defeats the purpose. But I look at it more from that standpoint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if they broke the rules, whether they gained an edge or not, I mean, they deserve a punishment on this. And I like, so if Harbaugh knew or not right now, I mean, that makes a huge difference in the degree of punishment. I don't think there's any scenario where it absolves him totally. No. I mean, there's no. I mean, but I mean, if it's determined though, like why I say like you want to determine what kind of advantage they got. You want to know how much injury they caused to these other programs, how much equity they stole from each of these individual programs by implementing something like this. And I think that does make a difference in how significant, like, you know, if they're stealing 7, 8, 9 points a game, you know, that's massive. If they're only stealing a couple, I think that's or if they're stealing less than a point a game, I think that it's hard to determine that they really did anything that significant, even though they cheated. So they're like theft's against the law, right? But you get punished differently if you steal $20 out of somebody's. If you take a $20 out of someone's hand versus if you're running like a Superman 3 and if you're doing like a Sam Bankman-Fried kind of fraud, you're stealing billions of dollars from it. So that's why I think, you know, the edge they gain does matter in something like this. One last question. Michigan's had a lot of like little scandals outside of this stuff. You had the Weiss incident. You had the Schembechler, Mozzie Smith last year. I mean, I don't know how this, you know, situation with the what's his name, Eude, and the pedophile situation. If you're going to make a lack of institutional control case against Michigan, how much do these cases come into? How relevant are those to this whole situation?
Well, I would say that they've all been reviewed and they've all been addressed. Therefore, they've all been dealt with.
But the NCAA hasn't really had any instances on this matter, have they?
Remind me of the Mozzie Smith situation. What was that?
Mozzie was pulled over last year. He was found to have illegal possession of a gun and lots of firearms and this was the night before. This was hours before he was arrested, taken to the police station, bailed out, and within hours boarded the team plane to Indiana. It wasn't revealed until a couple months later that he had actually been charged, and so there were no disciplinary actions. The program knew about this case the entire time, and I mean he was charged with a felony, boarded a plane and played later that day played the next day or something like this. And the program instituted no discipline for something that I imagine most programs would institute some sort of disciplinary situation for. So that is, I'm saying could that be evidence that this program is being a little deceptive and deceitful and not run as cohesively, as tightly as maybe it should?
Well, we've got this situation. We've got the Burger Gate. We've got the Mozzie Smith. That all comes under the guise of the head coach. And then you have this earlier incident, Schembechler and so forth, that goes way up the rungs. So there is that in terms of what level is responsible for these various situations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
It certainly could be used. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Mark, you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football, and that other super chat coming in from our guy Mike 3883. Have you heard about the used vacuum business that Stallions and Blake Corum have together? And is it possible any players knew, and would that matter? Would it matter if the players knew? To me, it doesn't, unless somebody could convince me otherwise. Off the top, my first initial reaction is it would not matter to me if the players knew, because I said this the other night, actually, that I would like for a particular player, 19, 20, 21-year-old, to be able to stand up to a situation like this and call it out. Like, let's say one player had the moral and ethical integrity when presented with all the sign stealing to say, no, that's not right. And I'm calling people out and I'm not taking part in this. Okay. But I am not expecting that out of that age of a young man in his development, and with all the rest of it going against him. And I just wouldn't think that there would be a reason that they would need to know, that needed in any way to be known to them. But it's an interesting case. Now, the Blake Corum thing and his connection with Connor Stallions, he completely denies. So until that is proven otherwise, I will take his word for it. We've got Matt is a new member here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for that, Matt. We appreciate your membership. Hope you enjoy yourself here at the Voice of College Football as a YouTube member. You get my picks every week. And then you also get Steve Merrill's Under the Radar selection, 18-5 against the spread. And then we also have a Discord link that we will get your way, and provide that Discord link. That you take that link and you go on to Discord, and we've got a college football message board there, and you can talk college football with a number of people there, in addition to all sorts of other things that we've got planned. Would love to do some more watch parties during the off season. All right. We've got Biggs Mike's on the line. Biggs, what's going on?
How you doing today, Mark?
I'm good. How are you?
I don't know. We got so far. We're talking about used vacuum cleaners, and it's just ridiculous. I just don't even. It's just never going to stop.
No, and that's what's going to become rather worn out. Is most likely this is going to carry on for, I don't know, the average NCAA investigation of this sort goes on close to 2 years.
Oh yeah, at least. I mean,
yeah.
No, for sure. I came on late, so I don't know what you discussed. So my apologies if I'm bringing something that you already talked about. But
it's more of the same, basically.
I'll try to keep it level. I won't drag it on. So is it assumed that Petiti will not make a ruling this week or at all now? The fact that he kind of jumped the gun on the penalty that could be coming Michigan or Harbaugh's way, most likely with a suspension?
Yeah, so that's what it appears. We're sitting here late in the day on Thursday. I would think that in addition to Petiti making that communication, giving that warning, Michigan responding within the 48-hour period, that Petiti would have some obligation to make his judgment. So if he already had in mind what this penalty should be and gave them a warning that it was coming, and then now he gets hit with all of this legal force that's on the Michigan side, that he already knew what punishment, what penalty he was going to impose, that it would be unfair for him now late on Thursday to unleash a punishment that deals with a football game that's coming up in 36 hours or so.
I would also think that if he jumped the gun with this punishment before, everything plays out, and, mostly because the coaches are complaining about it. Well, a lot of these coaches that are complaining may also have things in their closet that they don't want coming out. I don't know the extent of the Rutgers, Ohio State, Purdue thing with their signs or whatever, what it may be. But if he jumps to a conclusion right away on this, and then it comes out other teams are doing it, he set the precedent so he would have to do the same to those teams as well. So he might just want to pull back a little bit before he makes a decision to do anything.
Well, I understand what you're saying there, but why would he not then impose penalties on those teams?
Oh, no, I agree. I agree that he would have to. If he did that to Harbaugh or Michigan with this, he would have to do the same. So he set the precedent. So he might not want to do that. Because something comes out with these, Rutgers, Ohio State issue, well, then you're going to have, 4 total teams that you're going to have to do a penalty against. And, so it just hold back. Let the process work itself out. Like they do with every other situation that happens with NCAA. They let it work itself out.
True.
That's what you do.
Here was my defense for him possibly making this move. And this is before Michigan came back with all this legal force. And now I'm guessing he's backing down completely because the Big Ten doesn't want to get involved with a bunch of litigation concerning an ongoing investigation. However, the reason I thought it was fairly reasonable for him to consider this was, even though this investigation is ongoing, we are dealing with a current football season. We're dealing with a current football season now, and 2 football seasons, 21 and 22, that have apparently been tainted. So to allow this just to go on and on and on and on, when even though the investigation needs to be completed for a full look at everything, if it's been confirmed, which we all believe it has by the NCAA, that there have been rules broken, bylaws broken, that he could at least act on that portion of it, not knowing whether Harbaugh is involved, whether he initiated it or just was aware of it, and to what degree this went up the chain or any of that. Just knowing what we know about Connor Stalions and his actions, and all of that has been verified, that he was acting solely on that information. That's why I could get on board with that.
I agree. I see your point totally. I was just wondering if he doesn't want that fight now, since Michigan.
Oh, he doesn't want that fight now. And I'm saying that not knowing,
yeah,
but that's my strong guess is that all of that Michigan clout came back, and I do not in any way expect Jim Harbaugh to be suspended at all this season.
I just thought it was someone put it like kind of like if you rob a bank, like the coaches are fine if you rob a bank with your mask on and take the money. But if you take the money another way by, just hacking into the computer system, stealing the money and never actually going into the bank, then you're okay. So it's okay to take signs one way, but not the other way. And they broke a rule. I'm not arguing that for sure. It appears they did. There's no moving past it. But it's just funny how it works. Like Purdue literally had Evans Michigan signal that was for the Big Ten championship game. Like they had it, everything that we were going to do. Like, and so you can have signs that way, but not the other way. It's just funny how it all plays out. But
so while we know what Michigan did is wrong, if everything that's proven about, as you just mentioned, the Ohio State Rutgers situation with them giving signs to Purdue, I don't know if that's against the rules, but to me, that's unethical and probably comes under the guise of the not coming up with the term for it, but whatever the sportsmanship.
Because the sportsmanship rule is vague anyway, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, it's vague. So you could say that's unsportsmanship, just what Michigan was doing on sportsmanship. So it's just very up to interpretation.
Yeah.
What you want the rule to be. And that's the problem. We don't
now,
have.
Of course, if those three schools are then notified that they're under investigation, not by the NCAA, but let's say by the Big Ten, saying, we are now dealing with you, they would then counter with, among other things, I'm sure, well, we only did this because we knew they were doing that.
Yeah, it's just point the finger. This is any way you can. Yeah, isn't it? Or are you able to actually talk football for a minute, or is it only the Michigan scandal?
Heck yeah, please talk football.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So the Michigan-Penn State game,
yes.
Good one. Because
there's a game this weekend.
I know, right?
That?
It's funny, right? It's weird when we actually talk football.
That's basically the first thing I said was I would love to be talking football, but I know that there's a appetite for this, and I don't think we'd have as many people watching right now if we're talking the Michigan-Penn State game, unfortunately. But that's what I would like to talk about.
I don't want to lower your viewership, so I won't talk too long. So,
fire away. I appreciate it.
Well, I would say Michigan and Ohio State. I would say defense 1A, 1B, either way you look at it, right? The two defenses, like, it's comparable, right? They're both top defenses in the Big Ten. The two best defenses in the Big Ten, then followed by Penn State, most likely. Or Penn State might be the best defense, however you break the numbers down. But just by eye test, those are the top three defenses in the Big Ten. And it appears
Iowa should be there too.
Iowa too. Yeah, I just forget about the West. It's my fault. I forget about the West. They're very forgettable. But it seems like Penn State has an issue with explosion plays. They don't have big plays at all. Mostly. I mean, I guess especially against Ohio State. And
true.
Most of the season, and Michigan doesn't really give up.
Not against anyone until really the Indiana game.
And then Maryland game. Yeah, and then Maryland.
Yeah.
But so in Michigan, I don't know if with Michigan's defense being as good as it is, that they'll be able to. I can see them they got up and down the field a little bit on Ohio State slightly, but they would stall out. They would always stall out. They get to Ohio State's 40 and just stall out, and miss the field goal or whatever it may be, or make a field goal. And I just have a feeling it's going to be the same kind of game. And I just wonder if Michigan's offense is more explosive to Ohio State, that if that game could get out of control by like the third quarter, if possible, like it could happen, because Ohio State's offense was kind of, I don't want to say it's up to Penn State's defense. They're good, so they helped them struggle. But I think we all know Ohio State's offense isn't the same as it's been. But Michigan's offense looks pretty good, even though they haven't played an elite defense. I just wonder if that game could similar to be like last year when it was like, 42-17 in a sense. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts are, I don't know that I've ever seen a legitimate, I'm not talking about Houston slipping into the top 10 or something like that 10 years ago. I'm talking about, legitimate top 10 teams that I've ever seen a top 10 team get bullied and run on like Penn State did last year in Ann Arbor. They just got just now. I know Ohio State in the second half against Hassan Haskins and that crew got pushed around, but they got more like pushed around down the field at 5 and 6 yards a clip. Penn State just had like gaping holes that running backs, Corum, Edwards were just running through at will. That was just an embarrassment.
If you remember,
they got manhandled.
If you remember in the third quarter of that game, literally the one series, Donovan breaks like a 60-yard touchdown off. So then Penn State goes 3 and out. Michigan gets the ball back. Blake Corum breaks like a 50-yard touchdown run, just like back to back, just like kept gashing them all game. You know, it was just like, I think Donovan had like close to 2 and Blake had close to 2. It was just, I know Penn State may be better up front now than they were.
Well, they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be. Plus, I got to think if those two teams would have played 10 times, Michigan's not winning 42-17 every time, and they're not rushing for 400 yards because they're not rushing again for 400 yards against anyone. They were obviously motivated and on their game. And I'm not saying that they weren't better than Penn State because they certainly were. The entire season proved that, but I don't think to that degree.
Oh, no, I don't see that happening again. And I think this year Michigan's offensive line isn't as good. It appears as it was the last few years, right? Like it's been more on J.J. McCarthy this year than ever. Now, maybe Harbaugh and them are just, getting J.J. ready. Like for, maybe not because I think Blake runs the ball like 10 or 11 times a game, which is just what last year was 20 plus a game easily. Right. I think they trust JJ more now.
Oh yeah.
But
they do.
But I think if teams sit down on the box and try to stop Michigan, like Penn State just focus on stopping Blake and Donovan, like JJ is going to pick them apart this time. I feel way more confident this year in JJ than last year. Just making, I'd say he's a top 4 Heisman candidate, top 5. For sure. But
I am trying to look for and find Penn State advantages, and I don't find them. Not that they don't have exceptional defensive players. They have probably more first and second rounders on their defense than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But
especially at corner.
We could argue all day who has the better defense in the Big Ten and who's going to have the better defense on the field Saturday. I think it's so close. It doesn't even matter. Penn State's wide receiver core is underwhelming. It's okay. It's decent. Keandre Lambert-Smith is a good player. They have a strong set of tight ends, but their offensive line is better than average. And Drew Aller I have a ton more confidence in J.J. McCarthy than I do in Drew Aller. He played a really nice game last week, and McCarthy obviously brings more mobility to the position. I think the running back comparison's fairly equal.
Yeah.
But again, quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver, the lead is fairly significant for Michigan as opposed to any Penn State advantages at any positions are fairly negligible.
I think where they're going to get them at, because Penn State's got 2 really good corners. I think what Michigan's going to do is they're not going to be able to stop our tight, Loveland and Barner. Like Loveland, I think they're going to just, attack the tight ends, like just throw the ball to the tight end, like because they got good corners on Penn State. But Loveland's, when they get him involved, he's very tough to stop. And Barner is like, that was a great pickup on the portal. It was getting Barner. He's really come along the second half of the season.
Oh yeah,
So I think it's going to be but as we know, it's football. It could go either way. It could, Penn State could come out and just, they could dominate Michigan. So any given Saturday could happen. So I'm looking forward to an actual football game, and maybe no talk about, the signs, but during all broadcasts, all you hear about during a Michigan game is the signs. You just can't get away. I got to watch the games on mute.
They're talking about that during the broadcasts, are they?
Oh yeah. When during the last few games, especially the Purdue game and the Michigan State game, like they would talk about how the quarterbacks are walking over there talking to the offensive coordinator because Michigan possibly has their signs, and then they bring
Really?
it up. They bring it. The sideline reporters brought up that even last Saturday in Purdue brought up the allegations and what Petiti might do. They just it's a talking point. They're going to bring it up no matter what. Why would you talk about football when you could talk about signs?
Yeah.
So
I watched both of those games. I just didn't have the sound up because it's the least interesting game of the three that I was watching at the same time. So
it's smart that you didn't. It was useless. Sideline reporting. Don't
get me started on sideline reporters. There's about 3 good ones. The rest of them are just basically, oh my word. There was one last weekend. What game was that? And she asked the typical, how do you feel about the offense? And she must have had in her mind, I'm asking this, then I'm asking this, then I'm asking this, because what was stated before her next question completely answered what she had then asked. And the coach was like, well, I just told you that, we need to look at, our run pass ratio, whatever it was. And that drives me crazy. The whole sideline reporter routine,
I saw Ryan Day's face when she asked me, oh, your offenses seems to be struggling. What do you guys got to do? He's like, well, we're getting off script. We got to do this. It's like, so you guys are going to make adjustments at halftime to get the offense going? Well, no. Well, yeah, of course. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah,
right. You got to make adjustments. So, but
and I will admit that if I was in that position, it's not easy to come up with decent questions, but yeah, the level of football knowledge on the sidelines is lacking significantly.
I know people make fun of Harbaugh. I'll end the call in a minute, but make fun of Harbaugh at the end of games. Sideline reporters try to ask him a question. He always grabs a player and says, talk to this guy, right? A lot of people say he's just trying to avoid questions. Maybe he is, but I think it's always nice. He gets the players up front. Like, the players are the ones that won the game.
Exactly.
Say JJ, Blake, and they're the ones that help win the game. So talk to them. Don't talk to the head coach. So people make fun of Harbaugh for that, but I think it's a good thing. He gets the players to shine, not himself. A lot of coaches want to shine.
Well, I think that's cool too. And I've always liked that as well. Although he has to understand the sideline reporter and the network want him to talk because he's the star. He leads the program.
I remember after the Ohio State game last year, they really tracked him down and they try to pin him. And then he just grabbed JJ. He's like, talk to this guy right here. And he just ran off. So it was funny, but it's good. But yeah, in a few more weeks, hopefully Michigan and you guys are going to have no problem winning now the next few games. I think you got Michigan State, and I don't know who else you have, but
Minnesota.
Keep Henderson healthy. I'll tell you that. Don't run him to the ground against Michigan State.
That has been my suggestion. 10 or 12 carries. Keep him in the flow. That's about it.
Those games should not be close at all. I know Ohio State comes out slow in the first half. Those aren't games that come out slow, and Ohio State should be up 20 to nothing on Michigan State in the first half easily. So it shouldn't. I mean, you saw what Michigan did of Michigan State. I think they were up they won 49-0. So you guys should have no problem handling them, and keep your players healthy. I want everyone to be healthy, and for the big game, and let it play out on the field. So it should be another epic battle.
For sure.
Well, thanks for taking my call. It's always good talking to you. Thanks for talking football.
Absolutely.
I'll let you get back to talking signs and all that fun stuff. But I'll talk to you later, Mark. You have a good one.
Thanks, man.
Everybody.
All right. Before we take the next call, Matt is asking, do you see Michigan leaving the Big Ten? I know that this has been a hot topic now, that Michigan is just going to be so incredibly pissed off that they're going to leave the Big Ten. Okay. This is not good for the relationship of the two. I said that from the very beginning when there was any inkling of the Big Ten getting involved in this. And there, of course, was from the get-go, because much of this was coming in from the rival Big Ten teams, who was supplying all this information, who was, pointing the NCAA in the right direction. Well, it's always going to be the rivals. That's who it's going to be. This has gone on in the SEC for decades. So I thought, well, this puts the Big Ten in a difficult situation, because are they going to adhere and submit to the 13 other schools or whoever's at the forefront of it, or Michigan, one of their biggest brands. So it's put the conference in a difficult, conflicting spot. That's why the conference should get out of the way and let the NCAA take care of it for however long that's going to take, and that's unfortunate. All right. I do not see this happening, but we, of course, have seen bigger moves and bolder moves and more unthinkable moves in college football realignment over the last few years than we would have ever thought imaginable. Oregon's playing in the Big Ten next year, for example. So I know that there's been all sorts of talk that, Michigan could leave the Big Ten, form its own conference, play as an independent. If it goes the conference route, you've got Notre Dame out there. You've got, when is Notre Dame and Michigan? When have they ever gotten along about concerning anything? They have hated each other for decades, 100 years. Oregon State and Washington State, would they really be somebody that Michigan would want to get together with on a conference deal? Plucking Florida State and Clemson, would they really want, knowing that first of all, they can't get out of their grant of rights anyway? I don't know who Michigan is going to align itself with other than a reach of Notre Dame, a severe reach of Notre Dame, and a nonsensical and non-beneficial relationship with Oregon State and Washington State. Who else is Michigan going to get to start a conference? Or again, they could be independents. I don't see it. I might be wrong, but I don't see it. All right, we've got Jesse. Jesse, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for the contribution. Noting here that Connor Stalions was an unpaid volunteer recruiting analyst from 2015 to 21 before being hired in a paid capacity in 22 from what was reported. Yes. My question is, why wasn't Michigan as good from 2015 to 21? Well, the only evidence I've seen of anything prior to 2021, I think that there were some evidence. There is a thread of activity by Connor Stalions going back to 2019. And remember that there are all sorts of factors into how good football teams are besides stealing signs. So, Michigan has not upgraded its recruiting. We know that. So Michigan has not become the football program that it's become in winning Big Ten championships by increasing the recruiting. Now, if none of this sign stealing business was going on in any such way, I would tell you that Michigan has done two things to become a better football program. Number one, they have switched up its coaching staff and apparently made better hires, even though Josh Gaddis has proven since to not be a good hire. So why their offense was so good in that particular year, I think he basically was kind of got out of the way and maybe performed some menial tasks within the coordination of the offense. And Jim Harbaugh just ran the offense ultimately. But that the coaching staff, the connection that Jim Harbaugh has obviously with his brother coaching the Baltimore Ravens and being able to bring in Mike McDonald and then turning that defense over to Minter the next year. All the coaching moves have proven to be really good. But the recruiting has been no better. But there is something called the transfer portal that Michigan has taken advantage of and hasn't gone crazy in the transfer portal, but they have made very calculated, very wise moves in the transfer portal along the offensive line in particular. All right. And then we also have another super chat coming in from Dublub. Dublub, thank you so much for your contribution. If Stalions violated 161 by using, quote, agents, which is not banned in the language, then so did Purdue, whereas Ohio State and Rutgers are agents. Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier, that even though that second possible infraction, the one involving Ohio State and Rutgers, may not be against the letter of the law, that interpretation of sportsmanship, that leaves a lot to be interpreted. Now, Ohio State and Ohio State and Rutgers did not have to go on campus. They were on campus already. They didn't have to go to other games and use devices, and in no way does what they conducted in any way speak to the violations that Michigan's dealing with right now. But I get your point. I'm right there with you. It's unethical if you want to pull that clause. All right, let's get back to it. We got, Connor himself giving it another shot. What's going on, man?
Hey, what up, man? Where was I at? I'm trying to remember. Anyways, I guess I'll go to a couple things. I think it's important that there was a 2013 amendment to 11.6.1, talking about using third parties. So basically, what happened was the NCAA allowed other sports to use third parties to get film, right? And in 2013, they basically said that it's not fair that all these other sports can do that, but football can't. And because of advances in technology, blah blah blah, in the amendment it said that all sports should be allowed to do that. And I actually have the amendment as well. Hold on one second. Let me go through it because I got a lot of notes on all this stuff. Here. Just give me 1 second, man. I'll find it.
Okay, while you're looking at that.
Well, in the meantime, while I look for that, I'll move on. But anyways, there's an amendment they made in 2013 that basically said that because other sports were allowed to employ third-party means to get tape, that football should be included under that same guise, pretty much.
So, if Connor Stallions, aside from the sideline incident, and we got this reverb issue again, but besides the sideline incident, all this other business in terms of buying tickets and all of that seems to not be an issue. Then why is it being investigated?
I've read up on why it's being investigated, and interestingly enough, I forget what his name from the Athletic is. He had an article today talking about how Wake Forest had a similar complaint about a form of in-person scouting, and the NCAA didn't look into it. And there was another report that they weren't even going to look into this because people know, like, the Big Ten's been complaining about this for 2 years, right? Or it's been known in circles about sign stealing for 2 years. Maybe not what Michigan was doing per se, but the complaints were out there. And it was reported that they were brushing this off. But because of the leaks, it kind of forced their hand. And I think that's an important component here. It's not that the NCAA, from my purview, went out of their way to investigate it. It was kind of more like, let's get out in front of this, because if we don't do something, it's just as bad of a look.
Then, that being the case, why wouldn't they look into this? And, based on what you just read about this 2013 rule, then that's been amended. The Connor Stalions activity has been amended to be within the rules.
I think so, but I think also, I think they just have to. Now that they've started the investigation, now they have to do their due diligence. It's not just, you know what I'm saying. Now they have to go through all the avenues, find out everything. Because once you start an investigation from their purview, you have to go through the whole due process and actually do an investigation now. So that would be the answer to that. And I found the 2013 amendment. As a result of the presidential blah 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 blah, the rules working group was formed and charged with reviewing current Division I rules with a view toward reducing the volume of unenforceable and inconsequential rules that fail to support the NCAA's enduring values and emphasizing the most strategically important matters. This proposal is part of a package recommended by the Rules Working Group designed to accomplish those objectives. In the interest of simplicity and consistency, it is appropriate for one rule regarding scouting to apply to all sports. In most cases, video of future opponents is readily available either through institutional exchange, subscription to a recording or dub service, or internet sites accessible to the general public. So pretty much they were saying these other sports were allowed to use third-party services, but football wasn't. And in 2013, the amendment applied what was already applied to other sports and applied it to football. Secondly, we got that out of the way. So,
okay.
Secondly, the rule regarding recording, and the bottom line to me is these rules are very poorly written. They're very poorly written. I think that's the bottom line here. Like, there shouldn't be this much confusion of what is allowed and what isn't, right? And the rule regarding recording signs is also is poorly written, because when you're reading bylaws, you have to read them in order, right? You can't just read 4.11.h, which says recording of signs aren't allowed in any circumstance. If you just read that, then you're like, oh, well, then what these people did shouldn't be allowed. Well, hold on. That's not how that works. You have to read the whole 4.11 and also go further than that and read that whole section. The whole section pertains to in the game that you are participating in. So when you start there and you go down, and then you go down to the jurisdiction of 4.11, it says in the jurisdiction of 4.11 is the playing enclosure. Now, that, from my understanding, is the field. But either way, even if it was the whole stadium, the rule falls under the game that you are participating in. So then you go to 4.11.h, and that rule can only be applied in those circumstances. Your thoughts?
So you're basically saying that, let's say during the Ohio State-Michigan game, that if Connor Stalions has a device like was reportedly him on the sideline of the Central Michigan game, that's not allowed. Using that electronic device in game, but it is able to be used prior to the game in other games to gain a scouting advantage, to scout the team, get the signals, whatever.
Yeah, so this is how I read it. If Connor Stalions went to the game, he's already violating the in-person scouting rule. If he went to the game, if he recorded from the sideline, I don't think he would have broke a rule there, but he would have already broke a rule of even going to the game in the first place.
Yeah.
But if he's sending someone else there, and that's considered a third party, and that's not considered athletic personnel, and then there's no rule talking about you can't record in the stands at a game that you're not participating in. They have a strong argument. I mean, they just have a strong argument. And also, the Athletic yesterday posted the evidence that the Big Ten has. Have you seen that?
No. What do you mean the evidence? The evidence against Michigan or the Rutgers Ohio State thing?
No, the evidence against Michigan that they have. And I gotta tell you, man, it is weak. I'll read you exactly what they have, and it's beyond weak, which kind of leads me to my next point, which is right here. This is what they have. They have, obviously, Stallion purchased tickets. They have one unsolicited tip by an unidentified person claiming to have witnessed a person in Stallion's seat filming the sideline. They have a link to a public article that includes a now deleted video of Stallions on Michigan sideline during the game, which I'm pretty sure that's where he's just talking to the coordinators. And they have a short video titled UMass vs. PSU video that doesn't clearly show anything at all. This is an Athletic. It goes on to say, from what we can tell, your email, this is from the email from Petiti, is largely based on rumors. That sounds like an extremely weak case to me.
Petiti is challenging Michigan and threatening suspension or some kind of penalty based on rumors?
I mean, that's the evidence that he presented to Michigan. If that's all, you tell me. If that's all they have, is that strong to you?
Okay. As of a couple minutes ago, we believed that Connor Stalions purchasing tickets and having clients, let's say, attending these games, that was at the crux of all this, that was the main piece of information that broke the bylaw. And then that possibly if Connor Stalions was at that Central Michigan game, then that's over the top, and that's a whole other thing. But let's just stick to the ticket purchases and the colleagues or the agents that were given tickets, and then they got their recording devices. Well, all that in the original bylaws that everyone read is against the rules, and that's the basis of this entire case.
Yeah, I agree, but the problem is if you look at what was submitted to Michigan, they don't have anything of people filming in the stands. They have an unsolicited tip. And by the way, also an article, Petiti hasn't even seen any videos of people filming. He hasn't even seen it. The evidence is so lacking that I'm almost at the point where, and I'm not saying Connor Stalions didn't do this. I think he did. But the evidence is so lacking that, to me, it's almost like he's a new commissioner, right? And you have 13 other schools on his behind to do something.
Yeah, that's why he did that. That's why he threatened Michigan.
Yeah, no doubt. And also, I mean, there was a tweet today that kind of shows that they're backtracking by Adam Rittenberg. And it basically said was, I'll try to find, well, basically what it said was that from sources that the Big Ten is moving away from suspension talks and moving towards just leveling, just giving them a fine.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's very interesting, and I don't know, man. It's fascinating. We're gonna be talking about this story for, I think, ever, and we probably don't even know everything so far, you know. And one more thing about the whole rules thing. In the Big Ten bylaws, there's two important things in the Big Ten bylaws. There is a bylaw in Rule 32 of the bylaws that states, once an NCAA investigation has commenced, as in that's the first one, the Big Ten is supposed to follow after that. I'm probably butchering the wording of it, but once that started, the procedure is supposed to be they're supposed to follow out after that. Now, I don't know if he could just say no, we're good, but that's in the bylaws.
And see, that goes back to something I said when we first started talking about Tony Petiti, whenever that was, hours ago, is that I said, I would love to know who he filtered this through. Who did he present this to? Yeah, I can't imagine that he didn't get high-level support in the Big Ten office or even within schools for him to be levying some kind of suspension threat against Michigan. That they wouldn't have then said, well, we need to vet all this out and vet through what we are able to do.
And you know what? It would also explain Michigan's confidence, though.
Sure.
It would also explain why they're so confident and why they're acting the way they are. Because let's be real, who's dealt with the Big Ten longer, Petiti or Michigan? So you got basically a new kid on the block and you got vets. That's how I'm looking at that. You got the new kid on the block who I don't blame him. He's getting pressured by – there's nothing more powerful in a conference than your members. And if you're getting pressured on a phone call by 13 members, I don't care what people in the Big Ten office says, that's the highest form of pressure, right? So, I mean, that's a huge component. And the other component is the Big Ten doesn't have a rule like the NCAA when it comes to blanket responsibility. They just don't. Rule 10.1.1 clearly states that the only two things you can punish are the individuals directly responsible or the institution itself. You can't punish the head coach because of what a staffer did. It's not in the rules. And the NCAA coming out with what they came out with really threw a wrench in that as well, because how are you going to punish the head coach when the NCAA is saying what they're saying about we don't have any evidence that he even knew what was going on?
Well, that's lack of institutional control.
I mean, yeah, I suppose, but in terms of punishment, again, I mean, if that's I gotta read that part of if they can levy it like that, but from what I understand in terms of punishment, they can't punish a head coach for the actions of another staffer. They can punish the institution, but they can't punish the head coach. Whether it's if it's lack of institutional control, this is how it works. If it's lack of institutional control, they can punish the institution. They can't punish the head coach. In the NCAA, if it's lack of institution, that falls under the head coach. But in the Big Ten, it does not. It falls under the institution. Make sense?
Well, it doesn't make sense, but you're telling us what the what the rules are.
I mean, that's just the way they're written. If they would have had the 11 point whatever that the NCAA has, it would be different. But I'm gonna quickly talk about the game, man. I think I've addressed enough of that. I think Drew Aller is going to be a lot better than he was in Ohio State. First time starting QBs, they need time to grow. Especially when you're on your first road trip, on the road, one of the toughest places to play in college football. You know, he clearly wasn't ready for the moment, and the coaches didn't put him in the best position, throwing the ball 40 times. And I think he's kind of matured since then in a short period of time. And I think people shouldn't expect the same Drew Aller that you saw in Columbus. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, he has been better in recent weeks at the end of that Indiana game and last week. Yeah, there is much more room for him to elevate and improve than there is for him to decline in that game. Although he was at a ton of pressure, and I don't need to be talking on these calls very long because it's driving probably people as crazy as it is me to try to talk while I'm hearing myself reverb constantly. So you just have your last say on the game, and we'll keep going.
I'll just say I think Michigan's gonna win. I do think that look out for pressure from Penn State's defense. I think that's the biggest question mark is how much they can pressure JJ, how JJ handles the pressure. Defenses are pretty even. I do give a slight edge to Michigan's defense because I just think they've been historically dominant despite the competition. And I do give Michigan the edge in most spots on offense. So I will be picking Michigan, but I also don't think you're going to see the same Penn State you saw in Ohio State. One, it's at home. Two, Drew Aller, I think, has matured, somewhat since then. And I think the game in Ohio State that he had was less about his ability and more about the pressure of the moment and how and the position the coaches put him in. That's my last say in the game.
Good stuff. Thanks, man. All right. Yeah, once we get that reminds me of being on set back in the day and having a earpiece that if they didn't have the what is that called? The mix minus. Yes, they didn't have that properly set up. Hearing yourself reverb through your ear was somewhat distracting. All right. We've got Ben back on the line. We'll see if Ben's got a good connection going.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you, Ben. How are you?
Is my mic at a good level? Do I need to turn it up or down?
It seems to be fine.
Okay. Yeah, some of if you read, like, I appreciate what John said earlier. I appreciate a lot of the information that that our last I think it was Michigan man. You can read it right in that letter, and it's really interesting. I mean, if you're really interested in this, you should read that letter. It really. They put some, there was a lawyer team behind this letter. They know the rules, and they worded it very well. But yeah, part of the things that he was talking about, like as far as the rule that allows the Patini to act, what he was saying, the rule that allows, which is under the sportsmanship rule, only allows punishment of 2 parties, which is in that letter. And the one party would be the school. The other party would be the person that committed the violation. And they said in the letter, it says Coach Harbaugh falls on neither category. So that's what he was talking about. Just
okay.
And it wasn't about a departmental or control. It was about that particular.
Gotcha.
It was about that.
The Big Ten under their
conditions
can only attack the individual who's Connor Stallions, who's gone, and
so here's
institution.
Part of what we haven't talked about. Michigan, if you read the letter, Michigan's argument against the Big Ten acting immediately. For one, the NCAA investigation does not allow Michigan to have their own investigation. Michigan cannot ask their coaches and their staff questions. That's up to the NCAA. The NCAA has to commit. So the NCAA has not questioned the staff or has not questioned anybody in Michigan about any of these allegations.
Really?
So yes. So they have to do that process first. And Michigan was basically part of that letter states that we can't, we're under this investigation. We can't, refute this other thing because we're not even supposed to investigate to make any kind of a defense. So that's part of this letter. You should really read it. It's interesting.
Well, wait a minute. We've seen other NCAA investigations in which the schools themselves were doing self-investigations at the same time.
Well, that's what they said in the letter. It's against the rules for them to investigate, unless they're allowed, or it may be a particular process in the investigation. Maybe, but I think the NCAA has to. Schools can investigate themselves, but I think once it goes to a certain process, they're supposed to keep. I don't know how it works, but according to that, I mean it. I don't know exactly, like it lays it out. But I don't remember the details on that exactly. But that's part of the argument, anyways, which I think is interesting. So yeah, but and it also, there's another thing that you might find interesting in there is it talks about the NCAA's investigation, and it actually the letter Michigan wrote back to Patini says that the NCAA had indicated that they were going to try to finish this investigation up by this fall. So that's another little tidbit.
This fall, meaning now.
Yeah, meaning pretty soon. So
okay,
I don't know if that means, I don't know, and I'd have to probably really reread that particular part. But it's from what I get from the letter, it is a they are expediting, or they are expediting the investigation, the NCAA.
Well, that should make Michigan fans feel better about it, because I think the quicker that this is resolved means the less complicated it is, and the less that they need to sort through and determine a level of punishment. So that bodes well for Michigan.
Yeah, I want this over with as quick as.
I'm not just talking about that means it's going to be over quicker. I mean that the indication of it being determined quicker is a good sign for Michigan.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. And I think in both situations, I think it's less of a distraction. And I think if it's going to be done quicker, then that means that's probably
there's less involved.
Yeah. It's not. And a couple points I want to make. It's throughout this whole situation. And I'm gonna use a non-Michigan. Okay, I get a text message about a few days ago. Oh, other teams are like stealing signs and like, and I like got a link to an article, read an article, and the article is like, I'm like, what? I was like, no, I'm reading the article and it's kind of shocking, and then they talk about then they question, and then this article talks about how they questioned Ryan Day, and Ryan Day wouldn't comment on whether he was involved in whether he was involved in the sign stealing. And I was like, I got to find this interview. So I look up the interview, and the interview is nothing like the article makes it out to be. I mean, the article writes it in a very propaganda style, to make you believe that is all these other schools are committing these worse infractions than what Michigan allegedly committed. So it depends on who's writing it and what their agenda is when it comes to this. And I look at Ryan Day, then Ryan Day's coming off a bus. So the interviewee, and I don't know if you've seen the interview, but he's coming off a bus. They ask him something about what his feelings are towards the Michigan allegation. He says, I'm not going to comment on that right now. And then they ask him if he was related, or if he had any involvement in the sign sharing, and he's like, I'm not going to comment on that right now, and he's like getting out of there. I mean, the guy was like getting off the bus and just answered a couple questions, and then like they ask him this, and he just like he wants to get out of there. I mean, to me, I would not take that as a especially because they asked him the one question and he just like, I'm not commenting on that, and it wasn't anything not anything incriminating towards him, and they make it out like he didn't answer that question, so it incriminates him, and it's just a joke. I mean, the reporting on this is and people just are just like loving it. I mean, I'm sure it sells. I'm sure it gets clicks.
Yeah, and that's always to be taken into consideration, is that there is journalism, and then there is journalism tainted by pressure from the organization and who they're connected to, and just flat out, this is more sensational, so we're going to go with that, or this is just a better way to write this or present this. It's more controversial. It keeps the story going. If this was just, let's hypothetically say Michigan did a lot of horrible things and nobody else did anything. That would certainly cause a big stir and a lot of clicks and a lot of controversy, and we'd still be talking about it. But it's not as intriguing by any stretch as it is when, okay, Michigan's doing this, but all these other schools that attacked Michigan and took them to the Big Ten, and that they're involved in stuff, and what's that? And it's just makes it a much more interesting story when there's a hypocrisy level and
if it was a soap opera,
back and forth,
dun dun.
Exactly, one of those.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I think it's interesting. And actually, after I read this, I almost think the media's driving this to be bigger than in a lot of facets than what it might actually be, even with the coaches. As far as as upset as the coaches may be, but that's just my opinion. But anyways, another thing I wanted to just talk with you about too, how you mentioned the Connor Stallions. You don't know how the coach knows, would not know that this is going on.
Yeah.
And I can, to me, let me walk you through it. And this is just a hypothetical, but here you have this here you have this Connor Stallion guy, and let's say he did do this, but I'll put it like this: you have Connor Stallion, and he wants to get ahead in this organization. Let's say sign stealing is apparently it's a job that these staffers have, according to a couple people that I don't know for sure. I don't have that background information to know, but I heard you guys talking about it earlier. I've heard other people talking about it. Let's say, so so this is a job, and he wants to be the best at it, and so he goes out and does this. Now, as far as Harbaugh is concerned, I mean, we have one of the best training coaches in the Big Ten, or maybe in the nation, one of the best conditioning coaches. Harbaugh isn't asking that guy all his secrets and going over all the different things with him, or when some player has an injury, he doesn't go over all those details. He just cares about the results. I don't understand how that is not easily, like, I mean, he
Jim
doesn't
Harbaugh
question,
or any other football coach, not to cut you off, is not a doctor, but they are football coaches who played and coached football, so they're more recognized, that they are more in tune with the process of sign stealing and what signs mean in football and how they determine your scheme and your setup and how they're relayed. They know that process through and through. The medical process, they don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, okay, so
I'm not following your analogy.
No, but I'm just saying, okay, so I think there's many aspects. It comes down to micromanagement. You'll set people to certain tasks, and I mean, I've had people, you don't question especially when you have that, you have that many people that are working on it. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of people that are part of the football staff organization. Sure. I mean, you're not checking up on you're not checking up on exactly how everything's done by every one of them. And you may think it's above board. I mean, why would you have a reason not to if it's something that's a standard practice?
So we've got 105 football players. Are there 200 additional people? What are we including? Every secretary, everything?
I'm just saying there's a full staff. I mean, there's. I mean, how many? Okay,
so
just think how many people just
travel
with the team. How many staffers? There's 50 people on the sidelines that are allowed to a game, and there's other people that are involved in it that aren't going to
this
games.
Particular staffer. So two things I want to come back at you on this point. One is this particular staffer, however, is important enough to stand next to the coordinator and communicate signs. So this isn't just any one of the 300 or whatever the number is that might be picking up towels in the locker room or might be dictating a letter that Harbaugh sends out or whatever. This is somebody who's in the midst of the game communicating directly to the coordinator. So this is not just a staffer from that standpoint, at least.
I mean, I understand and I get where you're coming from. I see.
Number one. Number two, when you talk about large organizations and how much they're micromanaged, based on my experience, which is fairly extensive in large corporations, it depends on the individual and their leadership style. I worked in a department of about 650, and it would depend on what executive director, vice president you're talking about in terms of how much they would rely on, okay, I'm just talking to my leadership team and they're going to tell me everything that's going on versus, you know what? I'm going to have a hour conversation with everyone in the department, all 600 people, because I want to find out what they have to say about this. So there are different levels of micromanagement.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying.
I'm not disagreeing with you either. I'm just saying I don't think it's implausible. I don't think it's even unlikely that if this was going on, depending on any coach, I don't think it would. Not even just Harbaugh, knowing Harbaugh, I would think it would even be less likely that he knew, just because of his personality, than maybe another coach, because he doesn't seem to be that type of, like other coaches tend to be like thorough, methodical. He doesn't seem to be that methodical type.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean. But
again, to go back to my first point, though, we're talking about a staffer who's standing next to the coordinators during the game.
Yeah, but he's also making 50,000. But also,
it doesn't matter how much money he's making in that moment when it's late third quarter and there's a 3rd and 4 against Ohio State. Nobody cares at that point who's making how much money in that moment. And if that staffer is valuable information and he's talking directly to the coordinator, he then becomes an important person.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree. If that was his job to decode signs or steal signs, then why wouldn't he be there doing that, though? Whether they knew about the means of whether he did it or not, he should be there.
Okay.
I mean, would you not agree with that?
Restate that for me.
I'm saying, if you have a guy that's job is to decode signs or steal signs, and that's his job, you would think that's where he would be placed.
Yes.
Whether the means of him taking the signs were legal or not legal, if he was I'm just taking that out of the equation. If he was good at sign stealing, that's what you would think they would have him right there next to the coordinator.
I know enough about big time college football, and I've never been on this. I've been on the sideline for many games. I've not been on the sideline, within the coaching circle to know how hectic it is. But I think any of us who know football, who know the dynamics of what goes on during game day, and then I can also relate it to being in control rooms during TV shows and live games, and how hectic that is, and how quickly information needs to be passed, because it's boom, 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 boom. You're talking about seconds between plays and information and all that. They don't allow just anybody to stand around and be part of that. So the importance of his role during game day is rather important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing that. I don't know that other sign stealers and other people that are in that capacity aren't right in the ear of the defensive coordinator or whatnot.
I'm just saying that anybody who is not directly related and has an integral part in the play calls and in the communication is like, you get out of the way. We need to be able to do this as cleanly and quickly as possible.
So you think that just due to that relation, that like maybe higher staff members would have to know his process? Is that what you're thinking, that they're going to have to be not completely? Is that what that is? That, I mean, I don't understand why that, is terms of whether Harbaugh or any other members knew what he was doing. I don't understand how that relates, where his vicinity is, where I understand that he's important, but I don't understand how that would make. I don't correlate.
Okay. My response was based on you telling me basically that he's insignificant and he's one of 300 people.
No, I didn't
he's
mean
only making $55,000.
I
am drawing attention to how significant his role is during the game.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And that he's just not somebody that Jim Harbaugh barely knows his name because, he picks up towels and does the laundry.
Yeah. No. Okay. I got your point. Gotcha.
He's
clear.
Intimately involved in not that he's making the decisions, but in the information process when you need to make split-second decisions. And you're playing a Big Ten game, and this is why we do all this, is to execute in the moment. This is why we practice and lift weights and do everything all year, is to execute in this moment. So you're not going to have people around that don't count. in that moment.
I just totally missed. I kind of jumped off. I guess maybe derailed on my thought there a little bit, but yeah, I gotcha. So other thing I wanted to, another point is this. Now take all the sign stealing stuff aside.
Yep.
What about do you think it was another team? Who do you think it? Okay, so we don't know who hired this investigation firm that originally did this. Started this investigation, and then brought the attention to the NCAA. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, as far as how
meaning,
that
does
goes.
it matter who brought the information to the attention of the NCAA?
Or tell you what, I'll tell you I guess I'll tell you my thoughts on it as far as, and it's not just because it's Michigan, it happened to Michigan or whatever. Are we at the point where we're going to start spending millions of dollars? I know that's, but hear me out before.
I'm listening.
All right. We're going to spend millions of dollars to find whatever dirt we can on our opponents, whether it be rule violations or personal problems kids are the opponents are, players are having or coaches are having, and then leak that information to the press at convenient times during the season. I mean, what are your thoughts on the precedent that this might start? I mean, because it could end up to getting to that point.
I better start talking because I got like 5 things that came to mind that I wanted to hit on as soon as you started this. Number one is, and Michigan fans are going to love hearing this, this is only significant because Michigan wins. If we found this out about Illinois, there'd be an NCAA investigation and something, and then there'd be an article on ESPN and CBS Sports, and they'd cover it, and it'd be like everything else.
It'd be like a day, 2 days.
Yeah, it would
be,
it'd be a little mention somewhere, and it would go on. It might blow up into a big story just because of the ramifications of, are other people doing this? So anyway, that's number one. Number two is, to me, it doesn't matter who reported this, but I fully understand why that's important to fans who reported it. Yeah, there's a difference between some random whoever reported this. So let me backtrack just a second. The NCAA they're not traveling from campus to campus and having every athletic department turn over files and laptops to them, and then they say, okay, you're clean, we move on to the next team. Okay, now we're investigating Mississippi State this week. No, they find out because schools turn other schools in. So that's where most of this has come. And it went on for decades in the SEC. And then Greg Sankey had to say, enough of this. We have to work together for the good of the conference. You're constantly turning each other in. And I'm actually going to go back. The previous commissioner put an end to it. The one between Roy Kramer and Greg Sankey. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right this second. But basically to say you're killing the conference by turning each other in. So the NCAA has to get that information from someone. Somebody gives them a lead. And usually the ones giving the lead have an investment in that situation, meaning they're a rival. Gotcha. So now getting to your point about, are we going to spend millions and millions of dollars to do this? Well, unfortunately, we've arrived at a place in collegiate athletics where it's this messy culmination of politics mixed with money. And anytime there's a lot of money to be made and lost, then these kind of things happen.
Politics mixed with money, mixed with social media.
Yeah.
Which makes it even messier.
Well, yeah, social media makes this in terms of rumors, in terms of fans getting mad at each other and calling each other names and all this other business. If this was 1975, you'd read an article in the paper every week and it would summarize where we stand on all this. But yeah, we can blame social media for a lot of our problems here. It has made us an angry, resentful bunch of people.
Yeah, I know. I know. I see. I just see some of the things people post, and honestly, I want a fair judgment, whether what to whatever degree the punishment should be. If
I
they're,
do too.
that's what I want. I want a fair judgment. I think it's fair, and I believe in fairness. I believe in justice, and I just don't see it that often. And it, and I think no matter what happens in this case, some parties, some fan base is going to feel like it was unjust.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's the sad thing. This is the sad thing, but that's the way it is. And it's probably going to not be, and the way I'm looking at it, it's probably not going to be the Michigan fan base. Maybe it will be. It was looking like Michigan fan base. It looked like they were going to really drop the hammer down, and maybe they're not now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I am right there with you that for the second that this came down, I stated, I hope this is not true. I hope it comes to nothing. I don't want to believe that any of these games are tainted. And that doesn't mean I live in some Pollyanna world where I believe nobody cheats or does anything wrong. But for this particular situation, I didn't want that. But once we get to a certain point, and let's say you're right, let's say everything we know about what Michigan did, that's true, but nothing else. And most of us are reasonably comfortable with some type of fine, maybe some small suspension or something. But nothing that's going to change results or anything like that. Yeah, there are going to be a lot of fans who will take it to their grave that wasn't right, and they were cheated, and their team was cheated, and they lost games because those cheaters stole our signals and did it the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a shame. That's the way it is, and it just stinks, and no way that there is going to be and no matter what happens, there's no way you're going to really know. No, none of us really do. Even after the investigation committee, nobody's going to know exactly how much this affected and didn't affect. So people that do feel that way, at least they're entitled to that opinion, because there's no absolute way of knowing.
And if we really get to the crux of everything that we're talking about, you know what the crux of it is? It's 42-27 and 45-23. That's what it is.
42-27. What do you mean? Wait. 40.
What am I telling Ben here, chat? 42-27 and 45-23.
Oh. Scores. Yeah.
Those are the scores of the last 2 years. That's really what we're talking about here, because what Rutgers did and Purdue did and
well,
is
I mean,
pretty
if you're Illinois, you could have a say.
I understand,
because Illinois was a close one.
Illinois going 8-4 or 7-5, who cares?
Yeah.
So yes, I'm not discounting Illinois fans. If you're listening to me, I love you. You're part of the Big Ten, yes, but you don't win anything. So yeah, nobody else.
Here's a question.
cares.
So this happened in the SEC. This has been happening in the SEC. Do you think that it's going to be a problem in the Big Ten now? Do you think? Do you see? Do you see this being more and more of a like, hey, we're just going to find dirt on your program type thing, or I hope that this just settles it down.
Now, to be more fair about the statement I made earlier about the SEC, those SEC schools were cheating more blatantly than what the Big Ten schools have done throughout history. So it was out there.
Well, I'm going to be fair, but listen, I want to be fair to the SEC that they were cheating more. They were caught. They were caught. Man, I'm not saying that this not happened in the Big Ten, and I know for a fact that we have the whole like Fab Five scandal, in basketball. So who's to say what happens in football?
Sure.
So just to be fair too, no, we're not gonna just I don't want to. I'm not saying that the SEC is just, the forerunner of the flagrant. They're just They're the ones that got caught the most, probably.
Because
so that's where I stand.
Because they were turning each other in. Exactly. That was my first point.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thanks for having me on. I'm glad I got to air this. And anyways, I'm worried about the game. To talk about the game a little bit as a Michigan fan. I'm worried about this game. I'm worried about all the noise maybe being a distraction, and I'm worried that Drew Aller is going to be a quarterback for the games that I seen earlier this year, and not the game he played against Ohio State. So those are the things I'm worried about. And man, I don't know how many Michigan people feel the same. I have anxiety. I've seen Steve Dace predicted Penn State to win this game.
Did he really?
Yeah, and they do their Big Ten picks.
Yes,
him and Aaron.
Yeah,
and they both had Penn State. So I'm a little worried about it because
I wonder if Steve's playing a little reverse psychology on himself, thinking, well, I'll be wrong.
Well, he did have prediction. He had at the beginning of the year, he did predict Penn State to win this game, so he kept with it. And I guess he is playing that game with Aaron, so if he loses, it's that thing he does where he bets against.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be part of that game. So if he, but I'm worried about it. So I have a little trepidation.
Yeah, my whole scenario's, well, it's not screwed up. Actually, it's just going to happen in reverse. I actually had Ohio State and Michigan at 11-1, and I had Penn State losing twice. So, yeah, that's what I had. I had Penn State losing to somebody else along the line, whether that was going to Maryland or Iowa or somewhere.
See, now if I were going to look at it, when I looked at that scenario, I thought maybe Ohio State might drop a game to Notre Dame, and then both Michigan and Ohio State beating Penn State, and then Ohio State beating Michigan in that scenario. From the both have one loss, and then in Penn State the 2-2. That's kind of the way I thought if that played out, and that's the way I think. I think you brought it up, and I think that's the way I thought you were thinking it. And,
yeah, my preseason exactly. In my preseason between these three was Ohio State was going to beat Penn State, Michigan was going to beat Penn State, and then Ohio State was going to beat Michigan.
Well, it still could. We could still get a three-way tie. Still. So I'm hoping
that would be all sorts of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if there, I don't think it. And with all this allegation, I think, and I don't even know before. I think if Michigan loses a game, they're out of the college football playoffs.
The playoff committee will be climbing the walls if these three teams go 11-1. Of course, one of them is going to be 12-1, but really, is that really going to prove it much? Mm-hmm. Technically there'll be a Big Ten champion, but let's be honest, either one of the three would win the Big Ten championship, and they would have only got knocked out of some seventh tiebreaker technicality garbage. That's the stupidest thing in the world. If you really go through these tiebreakers, and I produced a video on this a couple of weeks ago, the place that all these tiebreakers are written for teams that lose games outside of those three, but it doesn't happen with those three. They don't lose to anybody else. So the tiebreakers all go, they are all useless until you get down to who played the toughest Western Division schedule. Well, if the West was worth a crap, then if this was any other conference in college football and it was like, okay, we're comparing Alabama, LSU, and Auburn, let's say they tied, and we're looking at who they played in the East, well, that would be somewhat reasonable. Like, okay, well, Auburn had to play Georgia.
Thing is, you can't take a game that
you're all the same. They all suck.
It's
terrible.
It's a coin flip. It's a coin flip. Who's going to win?
So we're really going to send, I'm just making this up, but it's based on my numbers from last week. We're seriously going to send Penn State to the Big Ten championship because their 3 teams that they played in the Big Ten West are 14-13, and Ohio State's and Michigan's are both 13-14. That is going to decide.
That's going to do. Yeah. Do you not think it's even margin of victories when it comes to the 3-way tie? Or don't you think margin of victory is a better metrics?
And I'm not all for, just because you won 41-7 and they only won 21-7, that you're better. But that's over a collection of an entire schedule in the same conference. Whether you make that against common opponents or for the entire conference schedule, basically, if you look at it, think of this, Ben. Actually, the point differential in the entire conference is valid because all 3 of them played the same 5 teams or other 6 teams in the division. So they play exactly the same. And those 3 games, like we're just talking about in the Big Ten West, are such a muddled, just nothing of, they all play the same, they just got different uniforms on with different colors. Nobody has a substantial advantage over the none of them have even much of an inkling of an advantage over the other 2. So I would go to point differential, and of course Michigan at this point would have a huge advantage.
But I would even think it's fair to do point differential between the three-way tie, the people that are in the 3-way tie. Yep. So if Ohio State beat Penn State by, how many points was it? 20 some points?
8.
Oh, it was only 8 points? It was closer than
20-12.
20-12. Okay. So anyways, even the point differential in those games, going with that would be, I think, a lot more sane than the way the tiebreaker is going. It's just crazy. But anyways, Mark, thanks again for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you tonight, and you have a good night, and I'm looking forward to I'm nervously looking forward to some football this Saturday.
Thanks, Ben. Have a good one. If Michigan and Penn State show up and they both play, let's say, their A game, or they both play their B game, meaning Penn State's fully capable of beating Michigan. They are fully capable. They're an extremely talented team. They are one of the 7 or 8 best teams in America. Something in that range. Okay. But if they both play their best or on the same level, both bring their B game, for example, Michigan's going to win this game by 10 to 14 points. Michigan's got a more mature, more seasoned, more skilled, meaning running the football. And he's just a more confident player, more poised player at this point in his career, quarterback. They have a better offensive line. They have better wide receivers. Now, not significantly better wide receivers, but I do like Michigan's wide receiver core with the tight ends included over Penn State. And Michigan does have a better offensive line. And Penn State's possible better defense is so arguable, but they are playing at Penn State. And again, Penn State could bring their A game and Michigan their B game, and then you've got an upset. But Michigan's a better football team. Michigan is a better team. Yes. His name's Keandre Mike Lambert Smith. I'm not saying he's a joke. I'm not saying that those wide receivers for Penn State are a joke and he's the best one. I'm saying they're not Florida State's, Washington's, Ohio State's wide receiver room. They're a bunch of 2s and 3s. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Man, it is 5:41. We're going to be back here at 7 o'clock. We're going to be here in an hour and 19 minutes with Tony Altimore, and this is going to be a fascinating conversation on college football TV ratings. So make it on back in 80 minutes. We will see you here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. I think we got to all these super chats. Let's make sure that we did. I apologize if I did not. We've got Biggs Mikes. Always good talking actual football with you. Thank you for that. Same here. And Mark chiming in with Does the Big Ten have any option to expel a member university? Oh, well, if it was that egregious to expel a member university, that is not going to happen. They are not going to consider that for both practical and ethical considerations, but also financial considerations. So that we are not anywhere close to that level. And Stephen enjoys the hilarious content and is chipping in for that. Thank you so much for that, Stephen. We appreciate you. Again, we'll be back at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Please join us then, talking college football TV ratings and such, right here at the Voice of College Football.